and welcome to the build-up in association with Ladbrokes. I'm your host, David Gillick, and I'm joined by Ladbrokes ambassador and former Ireland international, Stephen Ferris. How's the form, Stevie? You well?
Hi, yeah, good, thanks, David. It's just another big week. Like, I know there's squads and stuff getting announced. Just seen the Scottish squad was announced there for their tour to Argentina. So just sitting, waiting patiently to see what the Ireland squad's going to be when it comes out. I'm not sure if it's going to be this week. I would like to think it is this week that it is announced. Well, we see a few surprises when that happens. But of course, there's a couple of big games coming up this weekend. Leinster against the Bulls and Ulster away from home in Cape Town against the Stormers. So unfortunately, I'm not getting out to Cape Town. I hear the weather is half decent. Sun is shining in Cape Town, so we'll be covering it from studio in Dublin. But I'm looking forward to a couple of big games now and seeing how the South African teams go. And if they reach the final, who would have bloody thought that come 6 weeks into the season when they were all rock bottom and couldn't buy a win, and now all of a sudden you have two fans to try and win the URC title. So no, it's a good week ahead.
Yeah, well, we always say it, and when I've been chatting to you the last couple of weeks, a trip to Cape Town. Now, the struggle for you will be: do you bring the golf clubs or do you bring the surfboard?
I wouldn't be bringing the surfboard. It would cost me too much in oversized baggage, the size of the bloody thing. But the golf club would definitely be packed. There's a couple of nice golf courses down there I would love to play. Big Bobby Skinstad, former Springbok. He's nicknamed the Mayor of Cape Town because he's loved by everybody down there. I'm working with him over the weekend. He's an intelligent guy, but he's also a very shrewd operator. Loves his golf as well. So if we make our way out to South Africa next season, who knows? If there's a final down there next season, we might head out. The golf clubs will definitely be packed.
Well, like you said, the South African teams have really kind of got involved this year at a competitive end and are obviously still in with a shout. But look, we spoke last week about the Ulster versus Munster game, and you rightly said it was a huge opportunity for Ulster. Looking back at the game, obviously Ulster won. Munster, a lot of people would look at it and from that perspective they didn't even show up. But what's your take on it? How do you kind of assess what went on?
I know we chatted about team selection and into that game, who would be back, and Coombs was back at number 8, who's probably their best player, and he hadn't played for the guts of 3 months. He carried the ball really strongly. Conway came back in again. Dale Ende came back into the centre. He looked like he was having a smoke and a pancake. He was just so far off the pace, it wasn't even funny. And considering he played so well in Belfast 6 weeks previous to that, it probably shows the mentality of the players and not actually the physical capabilities, which is probably even more frustrating for Munster fans and the coaches and everybody involved there, because when I looked at those names on the team sheet, yes, they're still missing a couple of lads, but on the put Snyman in there, put Dave Kilcoyne in the loose head, a Conor Murray that's on song, they really are a match for any team in Europe, and they did not get off the bus, they really didn't. First kickoff, Billy Burns up in the air, right into Peter O'Mahony's breadbasket, and he knocks it on. And from there, it just got worse. The skill set on show from the Munster players was really poor. Their attack was non-existent. You had players running around the corner and other guys stopping halfway around the corner and running back the way to the open side, just wasting energy for no reason. Joey Carberry probably had one of the worst games I've ever seen him have in a Munster jersey. A really poor performance by him. He actually looked a lot better in the last 10 or 15 minutes when he moved to full back and he was able to run the ball back, and he had nothing to lose, I suppose, because the game was already gone at that stage. But so poor, missing touch, slicing kicks off the side of the boot. Just Conor Murray went off early. That maybe didn't help things. He didn't play particularly well when he was on, and it was just one of those days that Munster fans will try and put to the back of their minds, because Ulster didn't even have to play that well to rack up 30 points.
Yeah, and I think Peter Stringer likened the Munster performance to a pre-season tog out, was more or less kind of the way he described it. And you look at, like, there was a lot on that game as well. It was Van Graan's last game, essentially, and it's kind of, I watched it, and when you saw him kind of walk off at the very end, he looked shell shocked. He's kind of looking around, maybe looking for that kind of like vote of support or someone to give him a thumbs up, but it wasn't coming. Like, when you look into that, like, how would you look back on his tenure at Munster?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've watched the game back as well, and you would get a lot more energy in a pre-season game than you would in that game, because in a pre-season game you've lads that are wanting a challenge for their position, healthy competition for places. Like it just looked like half the boys were already on their holidays, and like I've been there, David. Like I've been there in a game that, albeit granted it was a quarter final, but I've been there in a game where things just don't go your way. Like, and the harder you try, the worse it gets. Like, yourself, like some days your mechanics just don't operate the same, and you can never put your finger on why it just didn't click. It could have been the preparation on a Monday or Tuesday. It could have been the travel up. It could have been a number of things, but they have to figure that out for next season. And Johann van Graan's not going to be a part of that process. It's going to be Graham Roundtree, Dennis Leamy's coming back down from Munster, Prendergast obviously from France as well for the backs. So they've got good personnel in there, key personnel that understand what Munster rugby is all about, and they need to bring back an identity. I think Munster are missing that and have missed that. I think that, like, I agree, Bernard Jackman was on alongside Strings as well, and I have to agree with him. Like, he was saying Van Graan probably should have went 6 months ago, like when they announced he was leaving, because take out those 2 big games that they won, like they've been very poor, extremely poor, and it just feels that the boys aren't playing for anything, playing for the coach or anything else. So to sum up, Van Graan, we had him on a URC podcast, and he was a great fella. You asked him a question, he gave 45-second to 1 minute answers. Where you get him on a TV and a pre-match interview, he gives you 10-second answers, 5-second answers, shorts, and it's almost like he goes into a shell. And I think it's disappointing, is what I would say for Johann van Graan's tenure at Munster Rugby over the last couple of seasons.
And look, take nothing away from Ulster. You have to go out and you have to beat the team in front of you, which they did. Were you happy with their performance? You did kind of talk it up going into it. That was a good opportunity, and they needed to show up. And look, they did. They won, and they scored a lot of points. And what do you make of their performance?
Yeah, like, very clinical, David. Took all their opportunities. They run, like, just outsmarted Munster a couple of times. The quick tap penalty that got, I can't remember who it was. That was John Cooney in the corner. There was a scuffle happening off the ball. Like, and next thing, quick tap, score. Balakoon made a brilliant read to stop an almost certain Munster try. And then a couple of minutes later, he makes the line break, which leads to the Stewart try. So, I think Ulster were in third gear. Like, I really do. They didn't go to their maul, which is their huge strength. And they went off the top of their lineouts and off the top of wide off scrums an awful lot. And fed off all those Munster mistakes, like, because they just kept coming. Like, Ulster didn't have to defend for huge long periods, or their backs weren't against the wall for a 15-minute block in either half. We interviewed Dan McFarland after the game, and he was absolutely delighted with some of the skills that his players showed, how clinical they were. Obviously, James Hume's individual performance was off the charts. And just to touch on him, like, I really think he's pushing. If I was picking an Irish side tomorrow to face the All Blacks, I would have James Hume starting at 13. I really would. I think he's playing better rugby than Gary Ringrose, and I think Gary Ringrose is a great player, but something that you never see him do is hit a line. He gets the ball in his hands all the time, and then changes direction, and then goes on an outside break, or passes it, or cuts back in, or he never would run a real hard line and then use footwork off 12 or around the breakdown. We see James Hume doing that every single week. A bit more Brian O'Driscoll-esque. Like Greco used to just carve these lines, and you could see it coming, but when it actually happened, nobody could stop it because the pace that he just came onto the ball, and James Hume showed there against Dale Ende, Rugby World Cup winner, Chris Farrell, 15 caps for Ireland, that he's more than capable of doing it against them. So let's hope he goes well against the South African opposition on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, elsewhere, Leinster bounced back with talk about racking up scores. They kind of, easily brushed aside Glasgow. Is that, you kind of expected that from that kind of level from Leinster, would you?
Yeah, like it was 20 points on the handicap. I don't think when we were chatting last week, the handicap was announced. I was doing a few calls for Ladbrokes and just kind of 24 hours before kickoff. And the handicap, it was 21 points, and then it came down to 19 points. And I'm sure whoever took a punt on Glasgow plus 19 were happy enough after the first 5 minutes because Glasgow scored. But after that, as soon as they scored, it was a cricket score. Like it really was. It was a scoreline that's ended up with the head coach of Glasgow, Danny Wilson, getting the sack. He's been relieved of his duties there. Big Alistair Kellock, who's the CEO of Glasgow, and John Dobson, the other guy Dobson, who's the main guy at the SRU. They've got rid of him. They've made a decision very quickly after a heavy defeat. But it's not just that defeat. Glasgow have been struggling for the last 3 months. I think they've lost their last 6. That was 7 in a row. Struggling for form. Still a good bunch of players to pick from. So it was a quick decision and one that I take my hat off to, because you can dilly-dally around these things and you can, let's wait and see who's available, and they've just went and made a decision, and they're sticking to their guns, and now there's a recruitment process probably going to happen for Glasgow, but they'll look ahead to next season, and I think a top 8 finish for them is got to give them a bit of credit because they gave a few teams a game last year. But just quickly on Leinster, I had to put my house and everything on Leinster minus 20 points like last week. I was chatting actually to Rob Carney and Bobby Skinstad, John Barkley, who was over for the game at the weekend. Just beforehand, we were like, well, lads, how many points do you reckon Leinster are going to win by the day? And Carney was like 50, and I was like maybe 40, and he's like, yeah. And Bobby or John was like, maybe Glasgow have got a. No, they don't. And just the power and players who are on song, and it got embarrassing. Kick off, set up a rock, 2 phases, try. Kick off, set up a rock, exactly the same play, 2 phases, try. I was just like, it was tough to watch. It was really hard to commentate on because all you're doing is driving the knife further and further into Glasgow.
Yeah.
You're talking up Jordan Larmour, and you're talking up Ross Byrne, and you're talking up how good Caelan Doris played at number 8, and the bomb squad who get emptied on off the bench and how good they were. But at the same time, the focus was in Glasgow because they were shipped 76 points. So it was a tough one for them, but I think Leinster are going to roll the Bulls again on Friday night. It's a 6-day turnaround for the Blue Bulls.
What's that because we're on to the semi-finals now, and just elsewhere for people, the Bulls squeezed past the Sharks, the Stormers took care of Edinburgh. So, you're on to the semis. Leinster hosts the Bulls on Friday, and Ulster head down to South Africa. Top level rugby, quick turnaround. Mentally, physically, is that difficult? Is that something that the players are capable of doing, or does it take its toll by this stage of the season as well?
Yeah, no, it can take its toll. I think for some of the younger lads, they just kind of get on with it. Nothing phases them. So, the likes of James Hume, he'll be relishing it. He'll be like, bring it on. Some of the older lads who their bodies aren't maybe as young and as fresh, won't like the 7-hour flight down to South Africa, but it's the boys, the Bulls coming the other way. 27 all with a couple of minutes to go, or 24 all with a couple of minutes to go against the Sharks. Huge physical encounter at altitude. The weather was good, so I'm sure like lots of fluids lost throughout the body, sweating, and the body I'm sure was aching the next day. And then 48 hours after that, they have to jump on a flight to go to Dublin, and then they have to play the informed team in Europe 6 days later, where Leinster just play a game, probably make a raft of changes again this week, sleep in their own bed all week, good week's training, and then hit the ground, good captain's run, hit the ground running. So yeah, like for the Bulls lads, it's going to be mentally very draining, physically very draining, and they got to try and get themselves up. So it'll be interesting to see what the handicap is getting into this game, David. Like I'm probably going to say it's maybe 15 to 20 points. Looking at it, and I would expect Leinster to beat that once again, just because of the situation that they find themselves in. Not all the travelling, and Ulster thankfully have that extra day, which could help them, try and get a win against the Stormers.
And do you see that happening for Ulster? Do you see going down there? Like, okay, Leinster, you've kind of said odds-on favourites there, but like Ulster going down?
Yeah, David, like they played the Stormers there a couple of months back, and granted the Stormers was their second game when they were in South Africa, so obviously got the jet lag out of the system, but they were absolutely robbed. It was a last-minute try, which subsequently has been talked about by the referee committee that there was a mistake made, and Ulster should have won that game. And look, these things happen away from home. That's what home advantage and home referees and hometown calls. That's what happens, and you just got to deal with it. And Ulster didn't even really play that well. Like the Stormers ran out, they were 17-3 up or 17-0 up inside the first 25 minutes, and we were all like, oh no. Then all of a sudden, Ulster changed their tactics, kicked the ball off the park, slowed the game down, very pragmatic, got stuck into them in the maul, and just around the breakdown, they made a few mistakes. Then all of a sudden, it was 17-10. Then all of a sudden, they got really, really cagey. The Stormers stopped playing, which is the worst thing that they can do because they're a great attacking team, really good counter attack as well, and they just about got over the line. But I just feel there's something in the stars for a Leinster Ulster final, an All Irish final. I think that they have been the two best teams in the competition, or maybe they've played the best rugby, I think, in the competition this season, and I think it would be a real deserved final if Ulster could get a result in Cape Town, and hopefully Leinster can do the business and get an All Ireland final in the RDS next Saturday. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, look, it's going to be a fascinating weekend. Lots of rugby to play, and like you said, hopefully it will be an Irish final between Leinster and Ulster. But as I said, a lot of rugby has to be played. Stevie, thanks for your time, and remember, if you are betting on anything this weekend, please gamble responsibly. Visit gamblecare.ie for more information. We'll be back next week for more of the build-up brought to you by Ladbrokes.